The economy's doing really well, but is it the end of the world? Are we all going to die? According to the media, sort of. President Trump announces his fake newsies, and everyone is agog. Plus, the worst form of art / not art that you have ever seen. It's really horrifying. We'll talk about it. Ben Shapiro Show. Indeed, many things to talk about. From the president speaking at the March for Life, which is a good thing, to the president tweeting out absolute nonsense about his own policies that makes no sense, which is a bad thing. Lots of good Trump, bad Trump today. We may have to break out the old theme a little bit later on in the show. But first, we want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Birch Gold. So even though the economy is doing really well right now, even though the stock market is doing really well right now, there are a lot of people who are looking to hedge their bets, which is why, of course, there are currencies like Bitcoin that are doing so well. Well, the original Bitcoin is gold, right? That was the hedge against inflation. It was the hedge against market uncertainty. And it remains the real hedge against market uncertainty and market inflation and the government jacking around with the currency. That's why you should have at least part of your portfolio in precious metals. Not the whole thing. You should certainly have some of your money in stocks and some of your money in, well, I don't really believe in bonds, but you should believe in but stocks. But you should also have some of your money in actual precious metals because it's just a safe haven. That's where my friends over at Birch Gold Group come in. They have a long-standing track record of continued success, thousands of satisfied clients, countless five-star reviews, and A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. Contact them now for a free information kit on physical precious metals. They have a comprehensive 16-page kit, and it shows how gold and silver can protect your savings and how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA. To get that no-cost, no-obligation kit, go to birchgold.com/Ben. That is birchgold.com/Ben. Make sure you have all your questions answered and you feel comfortable. And then when you do, Birch Gold are the people you need to talk to. birchgold.com/Ben. That lets them know that we sent you. Okay, so we were told that all human life would be ended. It would be like Deep Impact, except if crisis had not been averted by the tax cut, right? The tax cut was going to end all human life on Earth. And that obviously has been happening. The latest evidence that millions will die because of the Trump tax cuts comes courtesy of Apple, run by Tim Cook, a lefty, who said that they would now pay a one-time tax of $38 billion on their overseas cash holdings and ramp up spending in the United States as they seek to emphasize their contributions to the American economy after years of taking criticism for outsourcing manufacturing to China. Why? Because we changed our tax policy, right? Now we've changed our tax policy. The corporate tax rates were dropped dramatically, which means that now Apple doesn't have to outsource, right? All of its costs just went down for doing business in the United States. They say they will invest $30 billion in capital spending in the U.S. over 5 years. That would create more than 20,000 jobs. The total includes a new campus, which initially is going to house technical support for customers. They're calling this Apple HQ2, and right now there's an open competition among cities around the United States to get the new Apple headquarters. It'll probably be in Austin, Texas. If anybody thinks it's going to come to L.A., that's on their final list is L.A. They'd be fools to put this headquarters in L.A. L.A. is, for lack of a better term, a bleep hole country. I live here. I get to say that. Okay, the total includes a new campus and $10 billion toward data centers across the country. It also will expand from $1 billion to $5 billion, a fund it established last year for investing in advanced manufacturing in the United States. Now, one of the reasons that I think that this is good that Apple is announcing this is, as I've been saying for months, there's a difference between the government giving a company-specific giveaway to places like Apple and making broad-scale policy changes that have a good impact on Apple. It's useful for companies to sound off publicly and say, here are the policies that benefit my business, so long as those policies are not specifically geared toward paying you off. And that's not what this policy was designed to do. Apple's $38 billion tax commitment, this is according to the Wall Street Journal, is the largest such sum announced in response to the major overhaul of the U.S. tax code President Trump signed into law late last year. That law included an incentive for U.S. companies to bring home offshore holdings, with companies required to pay a one-time tax of 15.5% on overseas profits held in cash and other liquid assets. So instead of them having to keep all of that money overseas, instead, they get to now bring that money home and invest it here in the United States. These tax changes are very good. Obviously, not the end of all life on Earth. So Tim Cook, who is the post-Steve Jobs head of Apple, was asked about all this. He said some of this was planned already, but some of it wasn't, and the Trump tax cuts had something to do with it.
No, there are clearly, let me be clear, there are large parts of this that are a result of the tax reform, and there's large parts of this that we would have done in any situation.
So it sounds like President Trump's tax bill has been a huge windfall for Apple.
Well, there are two parts of tax bill, right? There's a corporate piece and an individual piece. I do believe the corporate tax side will result in job creation and a faster growing economy.
Okay, so again, all of the talk about how this is the end of the economy, everything was going to go terribly, it's nonsense. The stock market has gained 1,000 points in the last 8 days. Consumer confidence is high, as well it should be. Again, confidence in the economy is less based on the actual policy that the economy is currently sustaining. It is more based on predictability. In the economy, if you own a business, right? We run a business here at Daily Wire. One of the things that makes it very difficult to do business in the state of California is you don't know from day to day what exactly the state legislature in California is going to do. That means that we have to think twice before we hire someone. Do we want to hire somebody simply to fire them? Or do we want to hire somebody simply to have our profit margins cut arbitrarily by the state through tax regulation? The same thing holds true in all areas of the marketplace. The marketplace is always in flux. That is why I think it's George Gilder who talks about the idea that the economy, a well-run economy, should basically be like the static on a phone line. Right? The job of the government is to make sure that that static is as low as possible. That there's a certain predictability to whatever hum is in the background. The worst thing that can happen on a phone is not that there's static, but there's intermittent static. You actually would prefer a low level of consistent static on a phone call to every so often you just lose the call for 5 to 10 seconds. Right? Because then you can't understand what anybody is saying. It's the predictability of the economy that matters even more than the level of static in the economy, so long as the level of static in the economy isn't at some enormous rate where nothing can get done and it totally stagnates the economy. Now, what's amazing about all of this is, again, the economy is doing really well. The jobless claims are at their lowest level now since something like 1973. So there's still problems in the economy in terms of people reintegrating into the economy after years of spending time out of the economy. We're still paying too much in terms of people who are on unemployment insurance. But the economy continues to do really well. And the Democrats are very upset about this. People on the left are very upset about this, which goes to show, when people like me said we wanted Obama to fail, I said, I think that Rush Limbaugh was right. I wanted Obama to fail. The reason I wanted Obama to fail was not because I wanted something bad for the country, but because I thought I wanted his policies to fail. I didn't want him as president to fail. I would prefer that he embrace all of the policies that I like, do all those things, and the country succeeds. The reason I wanted Obama to fail is because he disagreed with all of my policies and he helped stagnate the economy. The difference is that people on the left are actually not happy when the economy does well. Right? When the economy did well under President Obama, or did mediocre under President Obama, I urged caution because I thought that his regulatory policy was really bad, but I was quite happy that the economy was doing well. You can see the difference. Chris Matthews is very upset about this. So he's back from vacation. You remember there were a lot of accusations that Chris Matthews, our MSNBC, and playing hardball with his female employees. He's been yelling at them, saying mean things to them. Wake up in the morning, comes there, they shoo, and say stuff. Well, now he's back. He's on MSNBC with Beardy McBeardalot. Don't know who this guy is. And Chris Matthews starts talking about how maybe it is a bad thing if the economy grows. Maybe it's bad for America if the economy grows because Trump or something.
I get this sense that one of the reasons the Dow Jones is going up, it's generally good news, but in this case, I wonder if it is, because what it means is all the stuff that we rooted for the last 40 or 50 years, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, all the things that good legislators like Ed Muskie got through are being termited to death, are being killed by administrators who want the government to fail in its mission.
Don't you understand? We need the regulations that kill the economy because it makes life better for so many Americans. That's why. The regulations are great. And if it screws a bunch of Americans and your stocks go down, you lose your 401k, well, I laugh at you. And then I go buy another shoe to comb my hair with. First of all, I love that MSNBC actually has chyrons like this, right? Look at the chyron on this MSNBC clip. Okay, just put up the freeze frame here. It's even worse than you think, right? And then it just shows America on fire. Yeah, they're not rooting for disaster or anything. It's even worse than you think with America on fire. Well, I didn't think it was that bad, honestly. I think that it's a lot better than you think. I mean, these people are crazy. People talk about Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, this is full-on Trump derangement syndrome. I hope that the economy goes to hell so that we can blame Trump for regulatory policy. And this comes from the same school of thought where people are very angry that in places like Seattle, there are companies that now will say, here is what your bottle of soda would cost. Here is what it costs with the soda tax, and doubles the price. And they're very angry that people would make this clear. Or businesses that say, here's what I'd be charging you if I didn't have to pay my employees minimum wage. People say, oh, how dare they? People did this with Obamacare too. Okay, reality suggests that when you get rid of regulations on businesses, businesses do better. Sorry that reality does, but that's just the reality. But over on MSNBC, they refuse to recognize reality because reality is oftentimes discriminatory, sexist, racist, bigoted, etc. Okay, so before we go any further, we're going to get to Trump's fake news awards in just a second. The fake newsies, they were, shall we say, a disappointment. He should have just rickrolled everybody. It would have been better. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Helix Sleep. So Helix Sleep is the best mattress on the market, okay? It's a mattress personalized to your unique preferences and sleeping style that won't set you back thousands of dollars. It's great, okay? The reason I know it's great is because I get so little sleep that when I do sleep, I better damn well be comfortable. And my daughter had a horrible cough last night. That means that we didn't fall asleep till 1 a.m. But I'm here, energetic and refreshed, because of my Helix Sleep mattress. Okay, go to helixsleep.com/Ben. You take their simple 2 to 3 minute sleep quiz. They ask you if you like the mattress firm or soft. Do you like it to retain heat, or do you like it to dissipate heat? And they'll build a custom mattress so that you and your spouse can have different sides of the mattress be at different settings. And it's the best thing you've ever slept on. We actually took a more expensive mattress and moved it out of our room in favor of our Helix Sleep mattress. It comes to you in the mail. You open up the box, it inflates right there in front of you, so you don't have to schlep on down to a store. It doesn't come in, you don't have to try and figure out how to fit it through the doorway. And then you sleep on it. It's great. And what's better is you can try it for 100 nights, and if you don't like it, they'll pick it up and refund you in full. Go to helixsleep.com/Ben right now. You get $50 toward your custom mattress. That's helixsleep.com/Ben. Right now, $50 toward your custom mattress. It's a lot less expensive than getting a mattress at a retail store where the markup's insane. Helix Sleep, you're getting really quality stuff at a much less expensive price. helixsleep.com/Ben for $50 toward your order. Again, that's helixsleep.com/Ben, and use that /Ben so that they know that we sent you. By the way, they have other products too, like the Helix Mattress Protector, the machine washable and dryer safe and completely waterproof. That's particularly good for ordering for your kids. So they have lots of great products. helixsleep.com/Ben. Use the /Ben so they know that we sent you. Okay, so last night was the much-awaited, much ballyhooed fake newsies. Now, I was hoping, look, if there's one thing that we could expect from this president, one thing I think would be fair to expect from this president, it is that if you're going to do a reality TV show, at least be good at it. I mean, my goodness, The Apprentice is actually an entertaining show from like the one episode or half an episode I ever saw of it before turning out. But you would expect that, I mean, Trump has actually appeared at the Tony Awards or at the Emmy Awards. He actually did an entire number of Green Acres with Megan Mullally, I believe it was, at the Emmy Awards. And you can find this tape online of Trump singing Green Acres. So I was hoping for some musical interludes from the president. I wanted to hear him sing Moon River. I thought that'd be great. And he could actually do it by mooning the press during the fake newsies. Say, Moon River, wider than a mile. And then just moon the press. Like, it could have been fantastic. It could have been great all the way through. None of that happened. Instead, it turned out that he sort of said that he was going to give fake news awards, and then he just half-assed it. Another Moon River reference. Then he just didn't really do it properly. So he tweeted out a link to the GOP.com website. And the GOP.com website was basically like an article that you'd find at Daily Wire or Washington Examiner or The Federalist that listed like 10 of the worst fake news stories of the year of 2017. He got some of them wrong, right? He suggested, for example, that CNN had edited. You remember, we talked about it on the air. CNN made a big deal out of Trump dumping a bunch of fish food in the koi pond. And it turned out that the Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, had actually done exactly the same thing a minute before. But you didn't see that because the CNN cameraman had zoomed in on Trump. And then people suggested that Trump was just a rude buffoon because he did it himself. So that was on the list. That they said that CNN had edited the tape falsely. That wasn't really true. There's plenty of fake news on the list, though. I mean, again, Chris Matthews suggesting that it's even worse than you think is fake news. That, of course, is not true at all. But he releases the fake newsies, and here are some of the winners. So we'll go through some of the winners. What he said was, first of all, CNN came in first place. They're the Sally Fields, you like me, you really like me, of the fake newsies. The New York Times' Paul Krugman claimed on the day of President Trump's historic landslide victory that the economy would never recover. First of all, I love that the Trump administration keeps trotting out the lie that this was a historic landslide victory. It was not, in fact, a historic landslide victory. He lost the popular vote by 3 million. I mean, just to be accurate, it is fake news that it was a historic landslide victory. It was not a historic landslide victory. It was a very, very close election in which he lost the popular vote. In the Electoral College, he outpaced everyone but I think George W. Bush in 2000. I mean, he was outpaced by every other election for the past 40 years. Except for W in 2000, which was a dead heat, essentially. Then they put on ABC News' Brian Ross choked and sent markets into downward spiral with false report. That is indeed fake news. CNN reporting that Donald Trump and his son had access to hacked documents from WikiLeaks. That was fake news, so he's correct. Time reporting that Trump removed a bust of MLK from the Oval Office. It wasn't really Time. It was a Time reporter who tweeted it out and then retracted it within a couple of hours, just to be a little accurate here. Washington Post reporting that the president's sold-out rally in Pensacola was empty. Okay, that should not make the top 10. It's weak tea. Okay, it's like when Crash won the Oscar for Best Picture. That one really is not on the list. But beyond that, it wasn't the Washington Post that reported it. Again, it was a Washington Post reporter who then walked that back within, I think, an hour of tweeting it out. And then I mentioned the CNN video about the feeding of the fish. CNN falsely reporting about Anthony Scaramucci's meeting with the Russian and then retracting it due to a significant breakdown in process. That was indeed a bad one. Newsweek reporting that the Polish First Lady, Agata Kornhauser-Duda, did not shake President Trump's hand. I remember when the media did this. I believe it was, again, a reporter for Newsweek, not necessarily the publication itself, although Newsweek is a garbage publication. I mean, today, Newsweek has an article about how Hillary Clinton could still be president. I am not kidding you. And not that she's going to win in 2020, like how she can still be president now. How if they find collusion, Hillary can still end up president. What's their weird theory over at Newsweek? I'm not joking about this. This is an actual thing. Their theory is that Trump would be forced to resign, and then Pence would be forced to resign, and then Paul Ryan would assume the presidency and name as his vice president Hillary Clinton, and then Paul Ryan would resign. That's the actual argument Newsweek is making. Okay, by that standard, I could be president, except that I'm not 35. Right? Your dog could be president by that standard. Paul Ryan could grab Gene Simmons, the front man from Kiss, and make him president by that standard. Right? But when we talk about the media being insane and then Trump saying fake news a lot, this is why Trump says fake news a lot, is because there is indeed a lot of fake news. And also because, let's be real about the narrative here. The fake news narrative arose originally because the media needed an explanation for why Hillary Clinton had lost and because they felt that they had not been successful in elevating her to the presidency. So if the media felt that they had been overcome, what could have overcome them? Well, it couldn't have been that people just didn't believe them. It couldn't have been that people didn't believe their narrative. It had to be that there was some nefarious fake news out there that people were paying attention to. Now, there's a difference between narratives that are false or legit fake news like Pizzagate and then stuff that the media believe is fake news like people talking about Uranium One. Okay, Uranium One is actually questionable. It's actually questionable. Like there's a guy who's indicted the other day for stuff that had to do with Uranium One. So the idea that everything that the media disagree with on a narrative level is fake news, it is mirrored now by the Trump administration saying everything they disagree with on a narrative level is fake news. Let's see what else is on the list. CNN reporting that former FBI Director Comey would dispute Trump's claim he was told he is not under investigation. The New York Times falsely claiming on the front page that the Trump administration hid a climate report. That was indeed a bad moment for the New York Times. So the New York Times got 2 of these 10. The CNN got 4. So CNN definitely, I mean, it's like Gone with the Wind. They swept the Oscars. They swept the fake newsies. And then finally, everyone, Russia collusion. You knew they were going to have to put this on the list. Last but not least, Russia collusion. Russian collusion is perhaps the greatest hoax perpetrated on the American people. There is no collusion, all caps. Okay, I tend to agree that there's not a lot of evidence of collusion at this point. To say it's perhaps the greatest hoax perpetrated on the American people in history, and you'd probably have to put like the Gulf of Tonkin resolution up there, maybe. Right? I mean, if you're on the left, you'd have to say the argument on weapons of mass destruction and the Iraq War. Russian collusion, I'm not sure that. How about the lie that blacks weren't people for like 150 years? That I think that would probably be a pretty big hoax. How about the hoax that's currently existing since the 1960s? The babies in the womb aren't babies. They're instead magical kill creatures that you can just get rid of with no moral consequence. But that is what it is. So what's hilarious about this is that this comes out and everybody is really celebratory for just a second. Like we were all really excited. Maybe it's actually going to be a tape of Trump in a tuxedo with a glass of champagne announcing the fake newsies. It would have been amazing. It would have been amazing. I mean, the troll possibilities would have been incredible. And if you're not going to troll well, then as I say, you might have gone with the pure Rick roll. Right? You should have actually just sent people to an actual video of Rick Astley singing Never Gonna Give You Up, which would have been also amazing. But instead, we sort of got the second-rate Oscars. I mean, it's like those years when they weren't using Billy Crystal and they also weren't using Johnny Carson. And so they just had like this bunch of randos in the middle. There's just a bunch of people who you never heard of hosting the Oscars, and it was really like, why am I watching this? That was kind of what the fake newsies turned out to be. But what's hilarious about this is that there's this image that's being promulgated by the left. And this one is, I would say, if not fake news, fake narrative, that Trump is the most dangerous president ever, that he's super duper dangerous. He's dangerous to press freedoms. And this is being helped along by people like Jeff Flake, the senator from Arizona. I agree with a lot of Flake's critiques of Trump's language on the press. But the idea that Trump is a legitimate danger to the press, the guy's not a legitimate danger to the only thing he's a legitimate danger to is a Big Mac. I mean, the president of the United States is not capable of taking down the press. I mean, look at MSNBC's ratings. Okay, the idea that President Trump is doing severe damage to the institution of the press. He's prosecuted fewer people in the press by a long shot than the Obama administration did. He's been far more transparent, actually, with the press than the Obama administration was. This is not to compliment his handling of the press. I think it's really dumb 3/4 of the time. But there's this idea that he's some crazy authoritarian who's about to shut down the press. Now, listen, his language with regard to the press, it does give impetus to people who feel like he's not going to call out anti-press activity in foreign countries. That's an actual danger to foreign press. But in the United States, the idea that the New York Times is on the verge of shutting down, that they're the failing New York Times because he says failing New York Times, is just a figment of their imagination. So Jeff Flake, who wants to run for president in 2020 and primary Trump, and then force everybody into this awkward primary situation, Flake gave a speech yesterday on the floor of the Senate. Now, I'll be honest, I kind of like speeches on the floor of the Senate that have to do with broad topics because this is what the Senate is for. Nobody showed up for it, though. And I mean, you can see all the empty seats behind him. Like, no one cared, except for the press, which made a huge deal out of it. Here is Flake talking about the authoritarian impulse.
Mr. President, it is a testament to the condition of our democracy that our own president uses words infamously spoken by Joseph Stalin to describe his enemies. It bears noting that so fraught with malice was the phrase enemy of the people that even Nikita Khrushchev forbade its use, telling the Soviet Communist Party that the phrase had been introduced by Stalin for the purpose of, quote, annihilating such individuals, unquote, who disagreed with the supreme leader. This alone should be the source of great shame for us in this body, especially for those of us in the president's party, for they are shameful, repulsive statements. This feedback loop is disgraceful, Mr. President. Not
with the idea that a lot of what Trump says on these topics is really ridiculous, but the idea that the authoritarian impulse is what's animating America, that we've reached the end of America, that fascism is upon us. Listen, I'm very much afraid of tribalism. I'm afraid that we are getting close or to that point under President Trump. But the idea that we are really threatened by the fake newsies, the president is not, you got to make a choice, Democrats. Is the president ineffectual or is the president a true danger to Western civilization? You can't have it both ways. And I think that, as I've said since the beginning, there's a strong case to be made that the president of the United States, you ought to attribute to incompetence rather than malice most of the stuff that he does that you don't like, because that just seems more honest to me. Okay, so in just 1 second, we are going to talk about, let's talk about this immigration fallout for just a second. So the latest from the Hill is that the president, speaking of ineffectual, the president of the United States just undermined everything that his own party is doing. So right now, there's a big debate happening over government funding. So the government has to get funded, I believe, by Friday, or we enter government shutdown territory. Now, I'm a person who doesn't care about government shutdowns. You're probably a person who doesn't care about government shutdowns. If you think you care about government shutdowns, it's because you don't know what a government shutdown is. Mandatory government services continue. You are still going to get your Social Security checks. The military will continue to be funded. The military ops will continue. The government will stay open. Right? This is why when there was a big government shutdown in 2013, the Obama administration had to manufacture crisis. They had to shut down open air monuments, right? Things where there wasn't any guard there. They just shut them down to show you that if the government isn't operating, you can't visit this rock in this park here. And so the idea that government shutdowns end the world is silly, but everyone wants to avoid it because it's a press manufactured crisis, and politicians believe it because they think they're the most important people on planet Earth. So the way this is operating is that Republicans are saying, here's what we want. We want a short-term continuing resolution. It'll continue to fund the government for 30 days. It won't be a brand new budget or anything. And in order to get this passed, we are not going to include anything with regard to DACA. So we are not going to solve the issue of the Dreamers. We're not going to say that they can stay. We're not going to renew their quasi-green cards. We're not going to do any of that. That's a separate negotiation. We just want to fund the government. And in order to sweeten the deal and get Democrats on board, we are going to sign into law a 6-year extension of the Children's Health Insurance Program. Now, the Children's Health Insurance Program is a federal program by which the federal government basically subsidizes states to take care of underage minors who don't have sufficient health insurance. It's basically an expansion of Medicaid on the federal level. I actually have some problems with CHIP, not because I think the government doesn't necessarily have a role here, but because I think the federal government doesn't necessarily have a role here. If states are going to shoulder the burden, or local communities are going to shoulder the burden of what to do with children who are underinsured, that makes a lot more sense. I'm a localist at heart. I don't know where the federal government finds the authority in the Constitution to spend billions upon billions of dollars on any of these social programs, and that includes even ones that I think are doing good things, like CHIP, for example. But it's a very popular program. It's obviously going to be remandated, all of that. Republicans have been trying to remandate it since October. Democrats refuse to go along with it because they want some strings attached. So right now, the Republicans are proposing that we go forward with this, temporary funding, this continuing resolution. No cuts, as always, because, as I've said many times on the show, no one has an interest in cuts. Everyone has an interest in spending. The Democrats are saying, though, that they are not going to vote for the continuing resolution. Now, there's some budget hawks on the Republican side saying, listen, we want some cuts. You want to do this continuing resolution stuff? We want cuts. This would be the House Freedom Caucus. We need something in return for continued funding of the government. And so that is leaving Republicans a little bit short of a majority. And no Democrats are jumping on board because they want the government to shut down, because they think that Trump will be blamed for a government shutdown. The reality is that it's a little more complex than that. Democrats could sign up for this continuing resolution and fund CHIP, but they're not going to do that. So the Democrats are very frustrated by this tactic, even though this is the same tactic they've been using for years. It's one of the reasons, by the way, I oppose omnibus budgets and omnibus packages, because it basically allows you to take a sweetmeat, put something good in a sandwich that's a crap sandwich, and then say, if you don't vote for this crap sandwich, you're voting against the children. And if you don't like this continuing resolution, you're voting against the children. This is why I don't like these omnibus packages. I do think that everything should be voted on individually and funded individually. You shouldn't be able to pass a bill that isn't funded, and everything that you fund should be passed on an individual level so we can determine whether it's something that is good or something that is bad. That's on an ideological level. But what the Republicans are trying to do at this point is get past the government shutdown. And in order to do that, they're using CHIP as a certain amount of leverage against Democrats. They're saying, listen, you don't vote for the continuing resolution, you're voting down your opportunity to continue the longest extension of CHIP funding in American history. So naturally, the Democrats are really peeved about all of this, and they say, well, you guys should just fund CHIP separately. Why are you connecting why are you connecting all of the funding in the continuing resolution to all of this CHIP funding? Why aren't you putting DACA in there? The Republicans, on the contrary, are saying, listen, you want the CHIP funding? Let's just pass a continuing resolution. We're good to go. Only one problem. President Trump has a Twitter account. So President Trump tweets out today, quote, CHIP should be part of a long-term solution, not a 30-day or short-term extension. Maybe he doesn't understand how this works. That's the Democrat talking point. Right? The Democrats are saying that they want CHIP to be part of a long-term budget deal, not part of the continuing resolution, because they're trying to extract concessions from Trump and team. So Senator John Cornyn actually had to tweet out at the president exactly what they were doing, trying to explain to him via Twitter how this works. And by the way, it is 100% true that the president is coached more by Twitter and by Fox News than he is by people who are inside the White House. Okay, it is 100% true that the most powerful Steve in America was never Steve Bannon, it was always Steve Ducey. Right? Fox and Friends, which is, I think a good informative show, there's no question that the president of the United States watches Fox and Friends and then makes decisions. I mean, you can see how he live tweets Fox and Friends. I mean, he really does it a lot. Now, all of that said, is this going to make a huge difference? Not really, but it is demonstrative of the fact that if you're going to pose Trump as some sort of nefarious, evil, Dr. Evil figure, he doesn't know what the hell's going on, guys. I mean, let's be real about this in policy terms. In the last 3 weeks, he has done this 3 times. 3. He did it on immigration. Remember, he did this in the meeting with Democrats. He started saying that Dianne Feinstein's idea of taking DACA off the table, of solving DACA, and then doing comprehensive immigration reform. He said, yeah, let's do that. Let's sign a clean DACA bill. And then Kevin McCarthy had to step in and go, Mr. President, no. And then Trump went, oh yeah, that's what I meant. When I said yes, it meant no. Right? So there was that. And then last week, there was a FISA Act renewal that was up. And the administration position is that FISA should not be weakened, at least with regard to surveillance of foreign subjects. And then Trump tweeted out, because he was watching Judge Napolitano on Fox and Friends, that we should weaken FISA, sending the entire thing into disarray. And we have this in disarray, and now immigration is in disarray. So Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, is just utterly bewildered as to what Trump wants at this point. He says, listen, we are happy to support an immigration deal as soon as we find out what the hell Trump is talking about. Because, I mean, I don't know.
I'm looking for something that President Trump supports, and he's not yet indicated what measure he's willing to sign. As soon as we figure out what he is for, then I would be convinced that we were not just spinning our wheels going to this issue on the floor, but actually dealing with a bill that has a chance to become law and therefore solve the problem.
So there's McConnell saying, I don't know. Okay, that's not great. I mean, it's not great for the policy of the United States when the president's own party is scratching their head going, with a majority in Congress going, well, your guess is as good as mine, guys. Now, is this a little bit of push from McConnell? Yeah, I mean, McConnell knows deep down that he could pass anything and Trump will sign it. Trump hasn't exercised his veto, I think, one time in his entire presidency. So the idea that McConnell will pass anything and then Trump will sign it is silly. I think what McConnell's trying to do politically here is avoid blame. If he gets a bad deal and Trump signs it, then Trump will just blame him. He'll say, listen, I just signed the deal they brought to me. I wasn't a part of the negotiation. And McConnell's trying to throw it back on Trump, saying, dude, give me something to work with here. And Trump is like, no, you're on your own. So it's been a lot of fun to watch the president fighting with his own party. Again, this does give the lie to the idea that Trump is some sort of MAGA evil genius who's going to destroy the world. No, that's just not accurate. Okay, so in a second, I want to talk about my hypothesis with regard to President Trump and porn stars. Oh yes, if that's not a sexy tease, nothing is. So you'll have to check that out by going over to Daily Wire and subscribing. For $9.99 a month, you can buy a subscription to Daily Wire. And when you do, you get not only the rest of my show live, you get the rest of Andrew Klavan's show live, the rest of Michael Knowles' show live. You get to be part of my mailbag tomorrow and have all of your life's questions answered in the most mellifluous fashion. I mean, it'll be beautiful to listen to. You'll just enjoy it from top to bottom. It'll be fantastic. So you get all of that. Plus, if you can get the annual subscription for $99 a year, you get all of those wonderful things, all of those wonders and glories. And this, the Leftist Tears Hot or Cold mug. It is currently filled with Cory Booker's tears. It has been filled with those for the last couple of days at least. And there will be plenty more where that came from because, not because, even bad thing is happening to Democrats, just because they can't stop crying. It's really weird. But we will talk about all of that. Also, if you just want to listen later, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, all of the places where you can listen to the podcast. Please subscribe at all of these places and leave us a review, which always helps us. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.